Good evening. How are you? Welcome along. It is time for another installment. Drop us a like or share the stream to try and get in the vision of more people. And when I see your name pop up on the stream, I can also say hello to you, so I know that you're there. And of course, everyone that comes back and watches the recording or listens to the podcast, I thank you for your ears. Without further ado, let me introduce you to today's guest, who definitely needs no introduction at all. The one, the only, the living legend that is Mr. Tom Wainwright. How are you, sir?
Good, thanks, Andy. How are you? Thanks very much for having me.
It's my pleasure, my friend. It's my pleasure. I can see Steve Reed, aka Mr. Blackwax, sending us a shout out already, saying hello. I'm just going to make sure all of my levels are fine. Everything looks good. So I say you're a gentleman who needs no introduction. We will get to know you a little bit more shortly, but I was very surprised, happy, whatever the word is I'm looking for, to see you at the recent Southport Weekender. Our eyes met across a crowded dance floor and a wave. I was like, hello. And we had a little bit of a catch up, and it was great to see you. I can't remember before that the last time our paths would have crossed. You have any idea?
I can't. It must be getting on for 15 or more years, you know. And it was funny, the kind of double take that you did when we spotted each other at Southport. I'd been for a long time, and it was a friend's 50th. And at first, when he suggested it, I'm like, oh, it's going to be ridiculous. And then I thought about it for about 20 minutes, thought, actually, that's a great idea. Yeah, I'm coming. And I'm so glad I did. I had an absolutely fantastic time. Brilliant.
Incredible.
Well, great to catch up with you and people.
We will get to talk about Southport at some point. Shouts out to Pugwash, who's with us. Thanks for the comment, my friend. Don't forget, guys, please don't be shy. Don't be ashamed to leave a message. I would love to say hello to you that's with us. So, Tom, the premise of these conversations are basically for me to catch up with our friends, to lay some bones to the legacy that you will have left. You are, without a shadow of a doubt, a name that is synonymous with quality music dating back to the beginnings of the house movement. I think that's fair to say. And I'd like to try and find out how you got into the whole thing. So very briefly, tell us about your upbringing, where you were born, the year you were born, and life for Tom in the beginning, as they say.
Okay, so from Manchester, I live about 3 blocks from where I grew up. Didsbury in South Manchester. Middle class kid, academic parents. Always loved music, always got excited about it from an early age, you know, really threw myself into whatever I was into, whether it was heavy metal, electro, indie music, and then hip hop, and then house. As you know, I kind of got into my late teens, and
so I guess I have to ask. Sorry, year you were born?
1969. I'm 52.
Okay,
which makes me 18 in year 0, 1988. So for me, anyway. So yeah, I kind of lost the way it worked for me. I kind of lost interest. I made A levels halfway through. Really wasn't, didn't want to be there. I finished them June 1988. Had no plan. Wasn't going to university. Got a job in a restaurant, and kind of the biggest youth culture explosion, at least since punk, if not before, was kind of blowing up on my doorstep, and I just wanted to get all the way involved.
Okay, well, let me put the brakes on you there. I think you've jumped headlong into it far too far, because we've got the whole era that went on that would have got us to 1988. Most particularly, you mentioned about electro and hip hop and the likes. You mentioned a diverse musical background. Do you have older, younger brothers or sisters that you would have been inspired by listening to their music, or not?
Not really, because my sister's younger. We were never really into the same things. My parents, when I was a kid, I remember them listening to some rock music, Sgt. Pepper and Joni Mitchell albums and stuff like that. Bruce Springsteen, they were well into, actually. my mum used to get the kids she taught to like camp outside Manchester Apollo to queue for tickets overnight if they bunged them a bit of money to get tickets for those gigs. But I can't remember, like, after me being about 10, they just seemed to listen to classical music all the time, and that didn't really register with me. So it's kind of, although I love music, it's kind of, I wouldn't say I discovered it for myself, but most of what I was into was stuff that, I hadn't been raised
just from friends at school and stuff. So did you get bitten by the electro bug, the breakdancing bug?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, when that kind of like first, I guess, crossed over into mainstream UK consciousness, it was like something phenomenal from outer space, incredibly exotic, incredibly exciting, brilliant music, clothes, the dancing. You know, it's like, yeah, let's get on board with this. And I was pretty below average breaker, to be honest. I was kind of in a crew. I think they only let me join to kind of some kind of tactical move where they put me on, you know, to do something badly. Then the opposing crew would kind of, you know, counter with a better version of that move. But then, you know, our main person would then come and. In your
mind, what was your signature move?
Technically, I was, you know, one of the body poppers in the crew. So, I was bad. I was really bad. But I was excited about it, and I don't know. I knew at the time I wasn't very good, but I didn't really care. It didn't stop, much.
Yeah. Oh well, we're kindred spirits there, mate. I had
a fairly good swipe as well. That was about the best thing. I could do a decent swipe, but I don't think it was even off one foot, so it can't be that good. So.
What is a swipe? The only swipe I can think of is a karate move.
I'm kind of. You've got me wondering now whether I've actually misremembered the name of it. It's kind of like. What would you call it? It's kind of the thing you might do if you're going into a windmill, but not. So you go on your hands and spin your legs once around in the air.
Okay. Then, well, I can see E pass through to say hello earlier. He might be able to put us right on that one. But anyway, we digress. Were you buying music around this time? Purchasing vinyl?
Yeah. This was when I kind of started buying vinyl, you know, and kind of, you know, seriously as I saw it, rather than just like the odd 7-inch single on the local shop. So I'd paper around, and I would earn about £5 a week, and you know that would buy you one US import 12. So I'd get paid on Saturday and then go to Spinning. Actually, was the shop in Manchester at the time for that kind of stuff. Buy one record and go and play it, and also, you know, the compilations, you know. Big Electro 5 Man, probably my favourite of one of those. I loved that. What else from it? Yeah, obviously Africa Bambaataa, West Street Mob, things on, you know, those labels. And that was just that
was the beginning of it all. Okay, we throw forward then, as you say, to the electro would have moved into hip hop and everything that went with it. And the acid. So you must have been already going to clubs at 16, 17, pubs or social clubs or things like that. Yeah,
I am. I can't go straight from electro to house. I'd like to. It kind of suits the narrative, but you know, there was a kind of fairly significant diversion into kind of Manchester, you know, New Order, the Smiths, stuff like that. You know, I played guitar in a kind of sixth form indie band and stuff. So I was well into that for a while. But then as I kind of got to kind of start going out, when I started going to clubs, I think I first went to Hacienda, I was about, the general clubs in Manchester, I was about 17. I know that, you know, I'd love to say that I was going to the house nights at that time and I'd been there since day one. I wasn't. I was. It was mainly like Saturday night at Hacienda was like a rare groove night at the time, kind of. So, you know, MA1 bomber jackets, 501s, Doc Martens, that kind of stuff. You know, that was good fun. I did used to go to the odd. They had on Thursdays they had an indie night, which when I was into that, I kind of went. I quite like that for a bit. But yeah, you know. I don't think guitar music really works in nightclubs, and I was kind of getting less interested in that and more interested in, the more dancey stuff, and also, of course, Public Enemy are huge at this time as well, and. So so in the clubs then it was kind of like a mixture of, it was that kind of phase that clubs went through at that time, of kind of mixture of like rare groove and hip hop, and I was super excited about all that. But I guess, do you want me to move on to the house bit now, or
just any pivotal moments that you feel when you look back? Because as I did say to you earlier when we were chatting before we came on air, I'd like to try and capture some of the tales that you feel that you've never told, because I'm fairly certain, 40 years in the game thereabouts, that you've been interviewed a hell of a lot and you've told the same story time and time again. But there's there would be some moments that you've thought of down the years and you think, what, I never really paid attention to the significance of this particular thing that happened, or this guy that you met on a certain night or whatever.
Yeah. I think something in that kind of pre-house club time, just so exciting, you're so young, so new. I remember, how amazing it was to hear things like Rebel Without a Pause or in clubs. There wasn't really a particular person that kind of got me into it. But the Hacienda put on its. I know Mike Pickering's going to be doing his house night for quite a while on the Fridays. I never went to that until I got into house, which was June '88 for me. And I know some people's eyes that'll always make me a Ted rather than OG, but it was quite interesting, but very the most interesting things happened in my life. I suppose. It was like they started this Wednesday night called Hot, kind of middle of June, 1988, and so the crowd that was there that first week was basically pretty much the same as had been there the previous week. So the kind of outfits I described a minute ago, I don't know, polka dot shirts as well, stuff like that, stuff, hats that nowadays might be kind of called Peaky Blinders hats, that kind of stuff that was happening. But there were about 50 people there who were well into the house and were there especially for it, and the music completely changed from the week before, because all the kind of rare groove and hip hop had pretty much, not entirely, been got rid of, and it was a house night, a lot of acid, and in particular a lot of acid house, but not entirely acid. And most of the people there were like, "Crikey, what's this?" Including me. This looks amazing. As I say, at that first week, there were only a few, 50 or so people kind of under the alcove and on the front of the stage really going for it. Well, it must have made a huge impression on everyone, as well as me, because the following week, the entire club looked like that. I went home, got rid of all that clothes I'd been wearing, baggy t-shirt, baggy jeans, and next week I was back and ready to go, and it was just, it blew my mind immediately. Immediately all I was bothered about for years, as I say, I had no real plan. I had a kind of, job that particularly serious kind of career I was considering, and all I cared about was house and going out. And as I say, I'd always got excited about stuff, but this was kind of different level, I suppose. I'm also emerging into like early adulthood. I moved out of home not long after that, just because you could, actually. There used to be much easier then than it is now. Plus, there's a kind of district just on the edge of the city centre, only about 5 minutes from the Hacienda, called Hume. You kind of go through it as you drive into Manchester off the M56. And it's been redeveloped now, but at the time it was masses of deck access flats that had been pretty much emptied out by the council. They were slated for demolition. They moved all the families out. A lot of it was empty. It wasn't even that moody, really. It was, well, bits of it were, but there was just loads of people had just moved into these empty flats, effectively squatting, basically. Not everyone, but quite a few people were, including me.
Oh, really? Wow.
Because you could. It was, that's... yeah, and... was I? Yeah, I was squatting, yeah. Well, lots of people were. Although some people, digressing slightly, some of the squatters, you could approach the council, and this sounds astonishing now, you could just have your name put on the flat as become a proper tenant. And I have a friend that got his flat that way, and then a couple of years later exercised the right to buy. And anyway, but yeah, you could, it was kind of like a playground, if you like. All my friends, I made lots of new friends at the time, and my kind of good mates pre-house weren't that into it all, and but it was all I was interested in, so I kind of made a load of new friends basically on the dance floor, and pretty much all of whom are still my best mates today. There are most of my best friends are, let's refer to them as made guys, like it's Goodfellas, like you can trace them all the way back to June 1988 and can vouch for them.
Friends of ours.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And, we all kind of moved to Hume, and it was a great time. Just going out most nights of the week. The restaurant I worked in stocked the Hacienda's flyers, which meant that in return for that, we got to go on the guest list. So I could go pretty much any night of the week, and it was on my walk home from work. So even the nights I wasn't that fussed about, like Thursday, I would still go then, even just because I could, and I loved the place. But yeah, just the excitement and kind of somewhat frenzied nature of it, of the way house got me, it kind of became all consuming. Mm-hmm. For a couple of years, I didn't really, you had the particular set of tunes on the mixtapes. They were just the soundtrack to everything you did. Things that happened in the outside world didn't really register. Big dues like, I don't know, the Piper Alpha oil rig fire. I think I found out about that about 3 years later. I think Lockerbie, I did find out about, but only like a couple of days later, and that was because
so complete tunnel vision.
Yeah, absolute tunnel vision. Yeah. And
I'll ask a question that we can skirt around. I'm sure you'll understand where I'm getting to. So at that time, you and all of your friends, were you completely immersed in house and everything that went with it, or were you just focusing on the music?
Yeah, we were kind of getting into most aspects of the culture as it was then. Yeah.
Okay,
that's fair. And as were most people who were kind of seriously into it. But
that would focus your attention a hell of a lot on everything about it. It would become a way of life, wouldn't it? Totally.
Yeah.
Everything that came with it. So, when did you suddenly think, okay, I've got these records now, let me start sharing them with people? How did that happen?
It was I was very lucky. It was right place, right time. And as you may remember, not everyone wanted to be a DJ back then.
No.
And it was kind of easier to get a foot in the door. So I was going to the Hacienda several times a week. I loved it. I bought all the records. By virtue of going there all the time, you just get to know a few people. I would hassle Graham and Mike a bit. Not about, let me DJ, but, what's this tune, what's that tune, kind of a tape, all that kind of stuff. Got to know a couple of the management people, including like the kind of promotions manager who was responsible for most of the kind of, innovative things that Hacienda did back then, Paul Cons. And the kind of combination of, well, actually, no, what happened was they started a thing where, I think it was on like Wednesday nights, they were going to start just letting anyone have a go in the kind of downstairs bar, which is called the Gatorade. And they were going to kind of like, people would go, they'd put a different person on every week, and it'd be a different kind of, or someone who'd like to be a DJ but wasn't actually doing any DJing. They they said I could do one of those. And, you know, this was like the most amazing thing that could ever happen in the world. But then I think it was the day I was supposed to play, or if not the day, then only a day or two beforehand, the club lost its licence. It was shut for about 3 months in early 1991 because of...
I remember reading a part of your biography a long time ago about this.
Yeah.
And they were saying just before it was going to happen, then you had the rug pulled from under
down. Devastated about that. That's probably for the best. It would have gone quite badly, probably. But anyway, in this kind of, it was then shut for about 3 months, and during this kind of the closure, they decided they were going to rejig the nights. I think Mike and Graham were doing Fridays at that time. Saturday was a kind of more party house night with a guy called Nick Arroyo, who actually went to live in New York and became a successful celebrity hairdresser. But he had a pretty good night going there, which was good fun to go to. And then they decided that during the closure, they were going to split Mike and Graham up. Mike was going to do Fridays, and Graham was going to do Saturdays, and a warm-up DJ was needed. And Paul Connors suggested that I might do it. You know, as Paul, incredibly good of him, really. And the kind of Hacienda had a bit of a reputation for just kind of doing or promoting new people, or, you know, giving people who are pretty underqualified, in retrospect, a chance. So I had to kind of prepare a demo tape, which from memory was mainly house, a bit of down tempo at the start. And this was going to be given to Graham, and if Graham approved it, I was going to get the job of warming up. And I know the tape was given to Graham. I have no idea if he ever listened to it. I've never asked him, but yeah, I got the job, and it was just a massive stroke of luck to a large extent.
91.
This is about May 91. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I was so green at the time. I think I'd been in the DJ box a few times. I'd seen a pair of headphones hanging up in the DJ box. So I thought headphones lived in the DJ box. They didn't. They weren't the DJ's headphones. They were the club's. So I got there on that night, you know. So it's the club's reopening week. This unknown has been given this gig of playing at, you know, the country's top nightclub on a Saturday night. And I got there, and there's no headphones in the DJ booth. And my mate who was with me, we had to send him running around to Graham's hotel to borrow Graham's so I could play. And God knows what the club and what Graham thought that this
they'd let themselves in for.
Didn't even have any headphones. You know, I'd really probably only played in public about 5 times before this. It really wasn't a leap. Then, you know, in this big space with a big system, the monitors at that time and then Hacienda DJ was quite small and not that brilliant. And, you know, I didn't know really about stuff like, you know, looking at the pre-fade level lights on the mixer to see how loud the next tune was going to be and stuff like that. So you'd be getting these massive volume change crashes and messing up various mixes. And I don't think I even had decks at home at that point. I don't think I did. I think I was in the process of getting them. So yeah, actually, you know, as I hear myself say all this now, I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Very fortuitous.
How did anyone allow this to happen? But I did get some decks. Sasha got me my decks because he had mates at DMC and was able to get them cheap. And, you know, he said he would. And I kind of wondered if he ever actually would. But then one night, I used to work at a bar called Dry, which was opened by the same people that ran the Hacienda.
It was on the same road as Eastern Block, wasn't it? Just up from Eastern Block?
Yeah, on Alden Street, yeah. And yeah, one night, just kind of in the behind the bar area, there's 2 kind of Technics 1210 boxes, and he'd sorted me out brilliant. And So then I was away. Obviously so Graham was very good to me in terms of advice and helping and stuff like that, and because I was just so into it anyway, I was going to kind of keep learning fast and get better, and you learn a lot by watching Graham, who at the time was one of the country's top DJs, if not the top DJ, especially in any kind of club rather than rave kind of.
Well, I was just about to say I've been doing a bit of reading over the last few months that's put a lot of the pieces of the jigsaw back together in my broken memory. And one thing that is very, it's always brought home is how you can sometimes get the years muddled up, and how different the scene was in 1988 to how different the scene suddenly became in 91. And you would have definitely been in the minority of DJs with the musical style that you were playing in comparison to the explosion of the rave culture around the country. So your music would have been very much more slower, groovier, blacker, if that's a right observation to make. Would you agree with all of that?
Absolutely. I can remember kind of when I first got into house, it was all just up tempo dance music that got played at Hacienda, and then quite quickly you become aware of the various genres and subgenres, and I kind of gravitated to that American more vocal, more instrumental, more soulful kind of side of it fairly quickly. Things like Marshall Jefferson's productions in the late 80s were kind of what really first got me into that stuff. I remember the first time hearing Someday by CC Rogers, which actually came to be a record that got so overplayed everyone got sick to death of it, but at the time it was just like it's just the most astonishing record you'd ever heard. And that was the kind of stuff I was very much into. And
well, we've got a legend. We're talking about US producers. We got a legend from Henry Street, Mr. Nicky P, who's watching. He came in earlier and said hello. I didn't want to interrupt you. Good evening, Nicky. Good evening, anybody else that's watching. So I'll allow you to continue. So you were talking about your musical tastes. Yeah.
But I wasn't say I was exclusively into that, and I kind of. As I recall it, 88 was mainly, big American records. Then 89, at the Hacienda, and I think to a considerable extent elsewhere, there were kind of a lot more European stuff, quite a lot. If you think of like a lot of the big records in the club in 89, things like Helion Halley by Capella, Black Box, 49ers, big Italian tunes that they sound good to me because they kind of evoke powerful memories, but in terms of like whether they're great records or not, I'm actually not convinced. But what else was there? There was actually quite a lot of records in '89 that weren't that great, like Tony Scott's Hip House and stuff like that. When you play those back,
what Tony Scott the Chief?
Yeah, the Chief. That's still actually.
I love that record.
Yeah, I don't mind it, but the one that got played most was Hacienda. That's How I'm Living. That was a kind of massive '89 record, and well, I guess at the time it didn't feel so hackneyed. But you look at it now, it's kind of every kind of bad hip hop cliche.
The thing is, that's the benefit of hindsight. You see, we've learned so much since then. But back definitely. Then, wide-eyed and just immersed in it. So sorry, I'll allow you to continue.
That's all. Then I do. Again, looking back, that was when. So obviously in '88, you did have kind of the kind of accessories, people like beach balls and kind of. What would you call it?
Props.
Sunglasses. Props, absolutely. And that was kind of, cool for a bit. And then, we decided that was all a bit passé.
Well, you kind of phrased earlier when you said, I guess I'd be coined a TED by some. There was that very short period of time where everybody was wearing big baggy tops. Everybody was wearing acid t-shirts and dungarees. Hands up, you know, guilty, bum bag. And then the next week it was like, no, Levi's, chippy sweatshirt, kicker boots. You know, it's just like, nah, that's all too passe. So it was that quick moving, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely what happened. And the kids that were still kind of going for the kind of more cartoony stuff, you know, they were Teds as far as I was concerned. You know, I'd been here, 8 months already, and these kids didn't know nothing. But that you can see there the kind of start of separation between kind of house clubs and rave, in that, the music was becoming slightly more, what would you call it? A bit more of a caricature of American house. But, had definitely the European thing, a bit more cartoony, that's not right, but it's getting a bit more, just taking particular elements of a song and kind of speeding them up a bit, or making them just about those hooks, or and also, whereas we might have had, like, say, a couple of props, people were having, rubbing Vicks on and sucking dummies, or enormous glasses, really kind of caricatures of what had gone on before. And
had that permeated into the dance floor of the Hacienda?
Yeah, it was kind of going that way. Fridays, and Fridays in '89 were really, really manic. They were, it wasn't like any of the kind of energy of '88 had gone. They were incredibly, busy, and the atmosphere was incredible. It probably was going a little bit more towards the direction that we would now think of as being a bit more ravey. And it was what kind of, part of what put Hacienda on a kind of path away from that, as well as kind of, I guess, the tastes of the DJs and stuff, was the death of Claire Layton, who was like, I think she was about a 17-year-old girl who died having taken of having a bad reaction to ecstasy, and she died in the club, and there was understandably a kind of major police and licensing backlash from that, and the club had part of what the club did was to kind of discourage that side of things, was to kind of probably misremembering, but to kind of the kind of rave element of it was kind of banished to some extent. There was the kind of all the kind of people who were kind of doing stereotypical kind of rave stuff that was kind of no longer
so the lineups would have changed to reflect that, to attract a different audience.
Not so much. I mean, the music didn't really change. I guess it was more about what you kind of, partly about what you wore. I guess in some ways, I guess it was kind of in a way, at least in part, that it was kind of that kind of way that side of the scene was going more towards rave was kind of, I guess, made to feel less welcome. And the club did take a bit of a dive, really. So in 1990, Friday nights were really pretty quiet. I would still go, but Graham would be playing to not that many people, and it was kind of the club had to kind of readjust to some extent, as I recall it. Still really good as far as I was concerned, but it was kind of in a little bit of a slightly fallow period. Then, as I say, it closed for a few months before I started playing.
Let's get back. I want to hear about this atrocious performance of Tom.
Yeah, well, I didn't actually. I've mentioned all the things that went wrong. The actual night, I remember it went very well. I kind of, barely, probably hadn't slept for a couple of nights just with the nerves and stuff. But in the main, it'd gone all right. It wasn't. It was definitely. Well, I'm sure if I was to hear it today, I would be pretty appalled. But it went pretty good. I did have. I'm not a kind of blow my own trumpet person, really, but I think I did have a decent feel for what worked well at that time of night. So I guess the technical side might have been pretty shonky. shouldn't have been allowed out in public, really. But the actual music, I think I did have a decent ear for, starting it off, building towards something, that then Graham could do what he wanted with from that point. So I think we would open at 9, and I think I did till 11, and then Graham would have done till 2 because everything shuts at 2 back then. And yeah, they had me back the next week anyway. I think I got paid 30 quid that night, I think. That was the first, and you had to actually, handwrite them a little invoice with, and there's kind of carbon pads. So you gave them a copy and you had a copy and all this. And so it went well. They kept me. And I think, so I guess the next big thing will have been Graham's first week where he's not at the Hacienda and he's going to play. And I think the first couple of times that happened, I wasn't trusted to do the main bit, and I think that's perfectly reasonable. So one of Graham's mates from Aberdeen, a woman called Jackie Morrison, came and played a couple of times. She was really good. And then I think after the next time Graham was away, they let me do, the kind of main. Well, actually, I think I would have done the whole night, because I don't think... Did people warm up for me when Graham was away? I don't think they did. So, yeah, I suppose 6 months later, I'm a 5 hours.
3, 4? I can't remember. What time did it close?
We shut at 2 at that time. I think it wasn't until about 93, 94 that we started opening later. And in those days, even if you open later, the bar still shut at 2. So, you had to have doorman moving the club, taking beers off.
A gentleman just replied saying you obviously did something right. A guy called Chris Hunter. When I posted a photograph of you on Facebook earlier, he said to say hello. You and he had played together at a gig in Preston at some point. But we'll get on to talk about guest performances a little later on. So you got to play all night, and again, I'm assuming that went well. By this time, did you feel you were making a name for yourself? Were you getting any notoriety? Was there a buzz around what you were doing?
A little bit. It was starting to happen. I mean, when I first started playing there, it was billed as Graham's Saturday night, and when the flyers came out, I didn't even have my name on. Again, which was fine, because again, I've never really DJ'd anywhere. It wouldn't have made any difference. But yeah, I think the kind of, it was a little bit easier for me when I did the whole night, because Graham was Graham's night basically. It's his job to kind of for it to evolve each week. And when he was away, the mice would play, I suppose, in that, I wasn't, there's no point in me necessarily kind of breaking a new record because Graham would be back next week and you might never hear it again. So it would kind of probably be a bit more big tuney, if I'm honest. And
okay.
Not by no means exclusively, I listen back to some of the tapes.
From a viewpoint of playing it safe, or that's just what you
both,
felt you wanted to do?
There's part of it. I knew the club very well, because I had spent 4 years on the dance floor, or several nights a week. So I knew pretty intimately what would work, what wouldn't, what people would remember, what they wouldn't. And it's a club where you could, always play new things. So there was a slight element of playing it safe. I suppose there was a bit of, if I'm honest, I would like to make an impression this evening. A bit of giving the people what they wanted, knowing exactly what worked very well, just from, the years of experience of going there. But then I listened back to the tapes, and there are tunes on there that will have been played at 1:30 that were either have been brand new at the time or I've no idea what they are. They can't have been big records. But I suppose, yes, there will have been an element of playing it safe, but then part of it was, I guess, I'm getting tangled up a bit here, really. I suppose, there's a bit of playing it safe, bit of giving people what they want, but also kind of wasn't necessarily a great deal of point in trying to be too clever, given that Graham will be back next week doing his thing. But
so by the end of the night, 2:00, everyone's streaming out onto the pavement, happy. Was there any after hours at this point in Manchester? Was there a burgeoning scene on the outskirts?
There will have been. I wasn't really going then. I mean, I guess I did kind of mark. When I started DJing, you kind of do a bit less clubbing, really. I guess. So we used to do a lot of after-hours stuff in mainly the late 80s. Again, in Hume, there was a kind of famous place in one of the kind of big crescent-shaped blocks there called the Kitchen, which is like two flats that have been knocked together. It's basically a shebeen. And there's very famous kind of parties there. It was on like the 5th floor. It was top floor of this kind of huge block. And I think it functioned as an actual. I only found this out relatively recently, and there's an article online about it. That it functioned fairly well as a recording studio during the day, which I couldn't really believe, because whenever I'd been, it would just been
a shambles,
absolutely packed out with people off their nut, basically. And I can't imagine you'd ever let any recording equipment near those people. But that was the kind of most famous after-hours place at the time. I'm trying to think. Okay,
let's forget about that then. Let's get back to the Hacienda. So in the heyday, it started to continue. Graham came back. You're playing. You say you're starting to make a name for yourself. Did you, because you were at the club every week, did you ever get the opportunity to guest anywhere else, or did you like to just stay at the club?
I did start to get guest opportunities. They had to be within a kind of, probably about an hour and a half drive of Manchester, given that I would be playing at Hacienda till 11, and most clubs shut at 2. And I didn't want to go guesting every week, because I did want to stay and see how the night went and what was happening and how it was working and stuff like that. I didn't want to be those people that just kind of played and disappeared. But that said, I did start guesting around, because if you've worked at Hacienda, that would open a lot of doors for you back then. And so I started playing, places, Leeds, Huddersfield, Preston, Blackpool, a fair bit. And you could also, guest on them. I started doing guest work on Friday nights and maybe other nights of the week, but mainly Fridays would kind of be main kind of gig elsewhere. Night, I guess, and they're kind of, I guess my heartland, pretty much all my career was kind of in the north, really, so Manchester based, Leeds, Hull, Newcastle, Middlesbrough, not a great deal in Liverpool actually, Preston, Blackpool, Stoke, obviously got to Birmingham a reasonable amount.
Slowly as the years progress, you would make your way down to Birmingham at some of the better known places. And someone mentioned earlier about your many slots at Moneypennies and the likes. So, I mean, as someone that's not really 100% up to speed with the way that you progressed and your career went, do all the years just kind of muddle into one? In between 1992 and 1990, whenever, talk us through it. Any
kind of eras, I suppose. So there's kind of first few years very much Hacienda dominated. I mean, the Saturdays for the first 3 or 4 years were fantastic. I know that the kind of, in terms of cultural significance, the kind of late 80s is what's talked about in the main with the Hacienda, and quite rightly so to a considerable extent. But those Saturdays for, the 91, 92, 93 into 94 were tremendous nights. It was always sold out. Even if the Saturday fell on like the 2nd of January, it was mobbed. It didn't matter if there was an enormous event on down the road. absolutely packed out. It kind of coincided with, what I regard as, a golden age of US house music, which was our stock in trade. You had classic Masters at Work productions, the Morales productions, the Roger Sanchez was becoming more prominent. I always loved Terence Parker. And so it's kind of perfect era, and I don't really have, this night was the best gig I ever did. But it would have been one of any number of Saturday nights around that time. I guess I'm trying to think when the club, did start to, it had a reputation for violence for a long time. I think I was probably insulated from it a little bit in that, I worked there and didn't really see a lot of them either. That, I'd bump into people who'd say, oh, they'd seen this happen or that happen, and
let's talk about this ever so briefly. Briefly. When you say it had a reputation for violence, obviously it was on the edge of notorious badlands in Manchester. All clubs that are successful have issues from other interested parties who want to come and get involved, for want of a better word. Did that actually bleed out then onto the dance floor so that people who came to the club would have been made to feel uneasy, or was it simply in behind the scenes issues?
Yeah, no, it did. There was so there was obviously the stuff going on behind the scenes with, I don't know, door teams and people skimming the money off and that kind of thing that ultimately brought the club down. But there were pretty moody nights in there. People,
I remember they had to have metal detectors at one point, didn't they?
Yeah.
They brought metal detectors onto the door because the people were walking in strapped and everything. One of the first in the country, if I remember correct.
Yeah, there were, and even in the kind of late 80s, there was often an edge to it. There was quite often brawls and stuff like that, even kind of in the height of acid house, and I guess as I was looking, and I never really, badly affected by any of that, and I didn't. To some extent, I was that young, I regarded it as part of the fun. But not everyone sees that that as being part of their night out, and that's perfectly understandable. But the first time I became aware of it was probably on like a weeknight in about 1990, when it was a pretty quiet night. I was in there with some mates. And this really tall bloke in a tracksuit was just standing on the dance floor, not dancing, just stood there and then kind of purposefully getting, going into the middle of like a cluster of people dancing and just getting in their way, and just stood there kind of, leaning into them a bit. And because, I was probably a bit pissed, and I was in the club all the time. And, as far as I was concerned, I was a valued regular. I started giving this guy some grief, what you think, everyone's just having a nice time, mate, stop being a dick. And, not much happened, but then the doorman kind of appeared like 10 minutes later and said to me and my mates that we all had to go because this person was actually, Salford, and, they could basically, in effect, couldn't guarantee our safety. Let's go. So that's the first time I became aware of it. As I say, it didn't really put me off going. But over the years, people would, I don't know, they just have their drinks taken off them by would be gangsters, or there would be isolated violence, or just general moodiness that people understandably don't want. It wasn't just a behind the scenes organised crime siphoning the money off. It was so it did actually bleed through. It was definitely a thing, and so I guess there was kind of the struggle to keep on top of that. The rival club opened in about 94-ish called Home, which was kind of Hacienda was kind of one of the first kind of, purpose-built, like, non-discotheques. It was kind of an industrial kind of space that it kind of became what so many other clubs came to look like. But, at the time, it was kind of, something completely alien and different from kind of chrome and carpet.
I'm just reading a book at the moment, and you hear so many things, and you forget so many things down the years. It was a former yacht warehouse, right?
Yeah, that's the legend. I only discovered this relatively recently myself. There was an exhibition. Manchester is always having exhibitions, that have some kind of factory or hacienda angle we are getting a bit like Liverpool in the way we kind of theme parking, our musical heritage. But they had one relatively recently at the Science Museum, which was about the early days of factory records. And it was very good. They had a bunch of, artifacts and, lots of kind of handwritten letters from, Rob Cretton, who was New Order's manager, booking, obscure bands and stuff like that. And so, for the nerds, it was terrific. But it also had photos of the boats that they used to sell. The pictures of the club when it still was a yacht showroom. And you look at these boats and you're like, yeah, that's like calling what you might win on Bullseye a yacht.
A yacht.
Basically.
Speedboat at best.
Yes, it's basically a speedboat showroom, and it's all part of the mystique, that it was a yacht showroom. But, 80s Manchester, not really what to call for a yacht show.
Okay, well, listen, I just stop again and say we've had a couple of people passing through. Hi to Jeff B watching on YouTube. Thank you for your comments. Says you're a true legend, Tom. John Rogers, our good friend, says he always felt dodgy when he came from Liverpool to the Hacienda. He was always a little bit on edge. And Darren Taylor says he feels that home was rougher. Actually,
I think home was rougher, to be honest. It didn't last that. It lasted till about, it lasted a couple of years, and it was rougher, definitely. But it was also somewhere slightly new and exciting for people that that maybe had wanted a bit of a change. To my mind, I was a massive Hacienda snob, and home was an inferior club in almost every respect. But people wanted to go. It did affect our attendances. For the couple of years it was a thing, and it did. It wasn't just home; it was the kind of clubs in other cities with had got their act together in a big way. In particular, Cream. There were other things for people to do. Hacienda wasn't the only kind of super specialist nightclub. It was getting more and more about the guest DJ circuit and we'd had the same people on every week, which was very much our USP, and that's how we wanted it to be. Although both Graham and I, were featured a lot on the guest DJ circuit. It was good in some ways, but in others, what was good about Hacienda was that it had the same people every week, and you get to build things and do things as a resident that you just can't do as hired guns turning up for an hour and a half.
Such a large and well-known club. Was there because you had such a transient crowd? It would have become quite, for want of a better word, touristy in later years. In the early days, did it have a strong community? Was it a group of all the faces you would see around you, comrades on the dance floor, or did it never? I mean, I went to the Hacienda a few times, so it'd be interesting for me to find that out.
In the early days, definitely, in the kind of acid house era, there was the core scene was only about 200, main people as I saw it. The people that would be out, they wouldn't just be out on the Friday; they'd be out, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they'd be at the kind of after parties, and they'd be, they were the kind of heads. Obviously there were a lot more people than that because you couldn't fill Hacienda with 200 people, but that was kind of there was kind of like a core crew and then extras, I suppose, as far as I was concerned, which was completely unfair. There could have been because you always more or less always stood in your own spot at the Hacienda. There could have been a group over the other side that were there as often as us. We never saw them. People did travel to it from. They always did. I guess it did come to start to be to some extent derided as a bit of a tourist attraction. From I don't know, probably about. Again, people were probably saying before then, but I would say 93-ish, I guess. People had always travelled to it. Really, it was it was really good. it was worth going to.
I think with anything, with the notoriety, slowly but surely, things do get watered down. And, even in that, we spoke about the change of fashion, of music and everything. And people move on, they move further afield. People get more money, they get better cars, they can travel further, and so on and so forth. So if we move to the mid to late 90s, any significant moments along the way? Correct me again something that I can't remember, I might have some vinyl of yours in here, or you may never have produced. Remind me. You have to forgive me.
I did some production in the early 90s with a couple of friends. So Matt Allett, who ran a label called Grand Plan, who was the person I went to Southport with. It was his 50th.
Okay.
And a guy called Leon Roberts, who was based with his brother in North Wales, and kind of
is that Matthew's
his brother was Matthew's brother, yes. So Matthew obviously did lots of stuff, and they worked or were based out or had access to K-Class's studio in North Wales, and so we did most of our production over there. And what happened? We did a few tunes with different names. I guess our hits sold all of 2,000 copies, but it was played on Pete Tong one week. Called "Sexy Move Maker" by Fifth Circuit, which still we had some remixes done, which actually one of them I still actually play. I do actually
So
genuinely
Fifth Circuit.
Fifth Circuit, yes.
Sexy Move Maker.
I think that was the title was from where we had like a Rex and Effect kind of vocal sample in there, and that's what that said. Well, that was the key kind of hook from it. So that was the hence the title. And then it was like a piano break lifted from some house mix of, I guess, some. I remember if the cover was a bloke called Johnny P. I think it might have been like a reggae artist or something, but it was, anyway, there was a really good piano break in one of the remixes someone had done.
Chris Hunter, who I mentioned earlier, who said that he played with you in Preston. He says great track. So
there you go. Thank you. And we got a bit of remix work off that. We did like a mix of a record on 8-Ball called "I Can't Let You Go" by the Mac Vibe.
Amazing record.
We did something else. We did quite a reasonable number of tunes and a couple of names, and I don't know. I don't think he had a particular flair for production. Leon did, and Leon knew how to work the stuff. So I guess most of my input would be like, can you make it sound a bit like this? Or when a lot of it kind of came to my input would be at the kind of when we're kind of arranging the tune into, I don't know, mix break intro, whatever, making it kind of dance floor friendly in that respect. But I couldn't work any of the equipment. It took days and days. We didn't always come out with something that was that great, and I didn't. I know that people talk about the amazing feeling they get when they hear a record they've made played in a club. I didn't really get that from it either. Okay. So mainly I wasn't very good at it. That's the main takeaway from this element of the conversation is Tom wasn't very good at production, and I wasn't. So that was kind of...
So the flame burnt out quickly.
Yeah. About 2 years of that, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it's still good fun, and it's nice to have a little section of your record collection that has things you can.
Well, I will be definitely going to check that out. I'll do a little googling. The funny thing is, I hold these conversations and they're very relaxed. I do zero research. I like to just talk to my friends because it's very easy to sit and read biographies and discographies and the likes. But we can all do that, and I'm sure everybody will go away and do that. So you'll this would be the point where I'll pull out a vinyl and go, can you sign this for me?
Yeah, you can see the Fifth Circuit section there. Yeah,
just for yourself. So towards the late because there would have been so many guest spots, there would have been so many guest mixes, so many radio shows, so many interviews. They all as someone nowhere near as prolific as yourself, or maybe there would have been times when I would have been because I didn't hold down a residency like yourself so much. But I know that all the gigs, they all blend into one after a while. So as we're getting towards the end of the 90s, does the energy, the passion start to fade?
Well, so I guess the kind of the last 18 months of Hacienda was a bit sketchy. There was a kind of shake-up of the nights, and I started playing there about once a month on a Saturday rather than every week, and which I didn't really mind about at the time. I was doing plenty of guest work kind of around the place, and then it finally closed in '97. By the time it closed in '97, I only had one gig in the diary at the club. So,
had you pursued a career by this point?
No. I was still DJing full time, and I guess that kind of '97 to '99 period was a bit of a. I'm not quite sure what happened in that. You know, I was still DJing full time.
UK Garage came along and killed all your gigs. That's what happened.
I think you're absolutely yes, you're absolutely right. And to some extent, also, but I will tell you, kind of possibly the low point of all low points. Cause I could very conceivably have retired, you know, not through choice, in about 98, 99. And I think the low point was I used to play about once a month at that Hush place in Birmingham, the After Hours place. Which, you know, I could never quite understand why they booked me that regularly, because I never seemed to go down that well. And the residents, in particular Kiddo, you know, did much better than me. Kiddo was a terrific DJ, and knew the crowd very well, and, you know, was playing absolutely what they wanted, which was definitely more UK flavoured than what I was going to dish up. And it didn't open. It didn't open until about 2:30, 3, did it, or something like that?
That's right. Yeah, after the Steering Wheel closed, after Money Pennies closed, after Wobble closed, people actually Wobble. I'm not sure. Well, it was an afters club anyway.
They always insisted they couldn't pay very, very much money. You know, for some reason I was agreeing to go and play. Well, actually, it was in a kind of beggars can't be choosers phase at that point, I guess. And it was my only gig that week was a trip to the Hush.
Birmingham City Centre, right beside the train station.
Yeah, I walked past it 2 weeks ago. I had to go to. We'll get on to my day job in a bit, but for work, I had to walk past it about 2 weeks ago. Like, there it is.
Spat on the floor. It's just the cinema's still there, still as innocuous. It's just as obnoxious as ever. Anyway, carry on. Tell us the story. Sorry.
So that was my only gig that week. You know, and I didn't have that many gigs in the diary. You know, things were getting a bit. You know, phone's not been ringing much. And you know, so you're setting off to Birmingham. You don't even leave your house in Manchester till like 1. On my own, got there, and the bloke on the door just said, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm playing this week." They're like, "No, you're not." And I'm like, "Sure, no, you're not playing." So I said to get back in the car and go home. And that probably was the low point. What kind of?
So was it on? You got your bookings wrong?
It was on, you know, and it was back in those days. I still had an agent, and you know, they insisted on, you know, Monday morning when I was kicking off, you know, they absolutely was on, but they just, I don't know. Maybe it was probably genuine confusion, but you know, there was kind of a bit of reappraisal on the drive home, and I think what kind of ended up spinning out my full-time DJ career for about another 5 years was I started doing a lot of work for Gatecrasher, who I know is synonymous with trance, which isn't what I played at all. But, you know, me playing at my most banging, I could, you know, warm up for them. And they also had a back room, you know, which played, you know, very much my kind of stuff. And they started booking me for lots of things. So the back room, you know, warming up in the main room there, playing in the back room quite a lot. I had a Thursday night residency there, student night, for 5 years, which I absolutely loved. That was a brilliant gig, especially about the first 3 or 4 years were terrific.
Again, forgive me for interrupting. Was this in Sheffield?
Yeah.
They'd moved to Sheffield. And was Scott Barnes still involved, or had he long since
Scott
gone?
was still involved then. Yeah. So this is kind of 99-ish, bit before. Yeah, so it was Scott, Simon Rain, Stephen Oakes, and sorry, Simon Oakes, not Stephen Oakes. Something about and I did a lot of work for them, and you know, and again, that was kind of it kind of gave me a mini career resurgence. I mean, I was back in the DJ Mag Top 100, and also there was a kind of a resurgence in the kind of music I played.
Funky house came back around, didn't it?
Basically, it's derided as funky house now, and you know, some of it was bad, but a lot of it was really good. And you know,
I like the term funky house. I think it sums up a brilliant era. Some people do look down their noses at it, but you had to have the defining terminology for the genres, because you'd have house, then it moved to US house, then it was like, well, we have to change this because this UK house is starting to sound a bit garagey, so then we've got to, then this is deep house, and then funk, you know, it was crazy. So
it was an umbrella term for what kind of traditional US house and lots of kind of disco. You know, kind of,
well, it was the birth of Defected, slap bang at the birth of Defected Records.
Absolutely, yes. That's you know, I was going to name check Defected as kind of having prolonged my career for several years, really, in terms of like, you know, the kind of output of that kind of music, and that was a kind of golden age of that kind of stuff. And there was just loads of great stuff, you know, and it wasn't, a lot of it was kind of French as well, and that was, so you know, I was super busy again, and Gatecrasher kind of did a lot of touring as well, and that's how I got to go around the world. You know, got to go to lots of places. I've gone to places before as well. Hacienda used to do the odd thing, and you know, I found myself in Hong Kong and, you know, Moscow and places like that, and then Australia and the Far East and America with Gatecrasher things, and you know, getting paid to go to these places.
It's going to sound a daft question, but were you loving it at all times, or did it ever get a little bit jaded for you? Did you get a bit tired? Because there's only so many times you can go and eat a great meal in a 5-star hotel room, right?
I definitely did get the international stuff. I always loved, because that was, you know, super fun, always a novelty. The treadmill on the circuit did get a bit wearing, you know, and I know for someone who's never done it, who really would have loved the kind of DJ breaks I got, that will always sound, you know, ungrateful. I don't know, like Premier League football and moaning or something like that. But I did some great gigs. I also did a lot of really pretty average gigs, you know, the treadmill stuff.
I'm
you know,
glad that you say that, because a lot of people would have done that, but they're always ashamed. Not even ashamed, but they don't like to admit it. It's not all gravy, is it?
I did lots and lots of gigs like that, especially, you know, I remember just every week on a Saturday morning I'd wake up and my, you know, then wife would say, you know, how was last night's gig? And I said, was it all right? You know, there was, you know, enough people there, and it's gone okay. It was really unremarkable, or often it might have gone quite badly, you know, not gone down that well, been empty, you know, just not that much fun, you know. Then,
did you ever take pride in yourself that you could make the best of a bad night from a performance point of view, or did you struggle sometimes?
Mixture, but gift and a curse. Because I often think I reserve my best performances for when there are very few people there to hear them. You kind of get those nights where you got a nightclub that's about a third full, and it kind of could go either way. And to kind of get a result then where, you know, it's not the best night anyone there has ever had, but, you know, everyone gets right into it for, like, you know, a couple of hours. I used to really, you know, take quite a bit of job satisfaction in that. It didn't always work, but, you know, when it did, you know, largely, you know, because you've actually done your job right, or it's all come off properly, that, you know, that was good fun. And that was annoying, because I was like, I've actually played really well there.
And there was no one here to hear it.
No one there to hear it. It's like a tree falling in the forest. So yeah, I often did save what I regarded as my best efforts. Probably, I don't know, probably because you were having to, you know, between every tune, you know, really fight to kind of, you know, hold on to the little you had in that room at that moment. And, you know. So
I hate to break it to you, but that's probably why they never let you play at the Hush on that night, because they
probably did. Well, I think they probably thought, you know, why are we getting this bloke on? You know, it's like, such a diva.
Nah, so many people have got so many fun memories of your sets down the years, I'm sure, and there are lots of your archived sets online on YouTube, on Mixcloud, and I'm sure you've still got lots of them. So moving into the early 2000s with the Gate Crusher, and you were touring. So pick up the story from there.
Most of the touring was kind of around 2000-ish, and so I guess the kind of kick up the arse my career had got kind of late 90s, 2000 into 2001-2 from Gate Crusher and the music that was around at the time. I guess that kind of started to wear off a bit. Started to be a bit less busy, kind of around 2002-ish. And that was the first time I actually did start looking around for, okay. Well, it was a combination of, I don't know if I want to do this forever, but also the knowledge that even if I did want to do it forever, it might not be up to me. You can only be a DJ if people want to book you. And I wasn't super busy, and although, I was ticking over, you could quite easily see a scenario in which, it was no longer viable. And, I didn't really want that to happen to me in a way that, I've seen it happen to some other kind of, mid-ranking DJs over the years. They kind of either couldn't do anything else or just couldn't bear to do anything else. And, I've had to kind of go down with the ship to some extent.
Now, before you continue with the story, hold that thought. Yeah. You made a very good phrase there about a mid-ranking DJ. Your name is synonymous amongst the musos, people who love their music. You are very highly respected, held in high esteem. Did you ever consider yourself to be a high-level DJ, or did you always kind of consider yourself to know where you were at, so to speak? Because I say this to a lot of the people that I talk to on the show. A very humble guy, because I don't have a lot of time for people who aren't humble. So I'll let you answer the question.
I'm pretty self-aware, I think, and I had a pretty good idea of my idea in the pecking order. There were certain towns, where I could headline a Saturday night and pull a crowd. And then there were other places, where I couldn't. I always knew that I was kind of in the north. I was kind of, a bit of a yo-yo DJ. Between Premier League and Championship, I guess. There'd be kind of, I might have a few years where I was kind of, staving off relegation in the Premier League in the other years. So,
Were there any towns where you would have that fire in your belly of a Saturday afternoon, thinking, I'm gonna smash it tonight? They're not ready for me.
I used to love playing at Shindig in Newcastle. That was a brilliant club, and they were very kind to me. They would put me on. You'd often be the only guest. They would only have maybe one or two guests, and obviously wasn't, and they would have a really wide variety of people on. It could be me one week, and then like John Digweed the following week, and obviously you would get slightly different crowds for those, but it was just you could really play all kind of all kinds of different records in there, and the atmosphere was terrific, and they were very good to me. And so a few years there, then people would turn up to hear me, and that was, I guess, my three favourite places were Hacienda. Over the breadth of my career, Hacienda, Shindig, and then the Thursday night residency in Sheffield. I really, really loved doing that for at least for the first few years, because that was kind of at the peak of that kind of golden age of what we term funky house.
Right, I get you.
So I'd kind of and I knew that kind of. I didn't really DJ a great deal in the south. I played in London a reasonable amount, but and Brighton a fair bit. But beyond that, there are huge swathes of the country I never played in.
Did you do Southport much?
I played Southport 3 times, I think. They've very kindly put me on, kind of doing a kind of earlier set in the Powerhouse, which was a wonderful thing to do. And as you all know, lovely people run it. For years afterwards, they would still invite you to come down to attend. Not if you'd ask them to, they just send you passes in the post, and so kind and brilliant gigs, and just a lovely thing to have done. So yeah, three.
A nod in their direction, indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, so after interrupting, you started to tell us about a change.
Yeah, and I had in the kind of late 90s, I'd accumulated a degree. I'd gone to university because I was a DJ and I wasn't really a producer, so I wasn't in the studio all week. I had lots of spare time in the week, and not with a view to kind of getting a job after DJing, but just because I had time on my hands and it probably wasn't a bad idea. I'd gone to university and done a degree. Well, it started off as like a kind of fairly broad-based humanities degree, and what actually came out with was politics and French. So I finished that. I did 2 years of that. Had a year off because that was when Gatecrashers said, "Look, we want you to go and do lots of touring, please." So I went to university and said, "Oh, can I come back next year?" And yeah, all right then. And I think they thought I'd never go back. But I did. I went back, finished it. Again, with not really a view to doing anything, carrying on DJing. And about a year later, I was kind of having a proper reappraisal about what to do. After kind of ups and downs of self-employment, pursuing something that kind of had a clearly defined career path was kind of sort of appealing. So I did the conversion course that you can do if you're a graduate in any subject, music, you name it. You can do a 1-year conversion course to convert your degree into the equivalent of a law degree. It's a very intense year. Did that, and then after you've done that, you have to do a year of what they call law school, which all kind of law graduates have to do. And then I got a job as a trainee solicitor in 2004, which doesn't feel like that long ago, but we are getting on for like 18 months of 18 years.
Yes, it is crazy to think. I see a lot of these memes online and saying about when someone says 5 years ago, or when someone says the year 2000, you're thinking 5 years ago, and you forget it's 22 years ago.
Absolutely.
So 14 years as a solicitor.
Yeah, well,
practicing
longer.
in.
So, yeah. It's pretty niche stuff, actually. I do. It's kind of like corporate governance work, but mainly for housing associations. So anyone watching who's not from the UK, housing associations are kind of low-cost housing providers that people traditionally rent off, but you can also buy off them these days. And this is pretty dry stuff and a pretty good conversation killer. They're subject to kind of lots of regulation, and they're also charities, and they're subject to all kind of charity law and stuff like that. And it's about procedural stuff. And when they want to do things, they're always kind of engaging on projects or merging with each other or changing their constitutions or applying for grants. And I do that. The firm I trained with, did a lot of that kind of work. It appealed to me in that the work is quite dry, but the clients are all well-meaning people, nice people. I kind of just fell into that particular corner of the law, which, very few people do. But it suits me pretty well. And I started doing that, and it worked fairly well from a kind of, income point of view, as the DJing kind of joined the 2 years. When you start training as a solicitor, you do 2 years of you're training for 2 years, and then you kind of qualify, and that usually brings with it a decent pay rise. So the kind of DJing kind of fizzled out over those 2 years of the training, and so in about 2000, I can't quite remember when my last kind of gig was I a full-time DJ? Well, I had a day job then, but the kind of last gig of the kind of, professional era where I was DJing regularly, I think was around the time of there was a gig actually in Preston around the 2006 World Cup.
Maybe it was with Chris. Maybe Chris will tell us that it was then.
Was it that one?
We got Lee right here. Sorry, Lee, I didn't see you commenting. Shout, Lee. How are you, mate?
Hi, Lee, you all right?
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I did that gig, and that's the reason that stuck in my head as like perhaps the last one of the kind of, you know, the gig that followed the gig that followed the gig. Because I didn't DJ in public then for about 4 or 5 years. I was getting offers to play on the retro circuit, and I'd never wanted to do that. I'd always been probably taken it a bit too seriously in retrospect, but you know, one of the reasons I got into house was
you can never take music too seriously. You can never take it too seriously.
I'd got into it, and you know, my argument was I'd got into it in the first place. It was, you know, because it was all so brand new, and there was always new stuff, and I guess once you've had enough time away, you're kind of like, well, you know, maybe you need to be so precious about it. And so I'd said no to any kind of gigs I was offered for several years, and then one day, I think it was probably a Hacienda event, I said, yeah, all right then. And this would have been about 2010 and 2011-ish, probably. And yeah, I was stressed really badly, you know, for ages beforehand. I wouldn't have...
stressed? I thought you said dressed.
No, not dressed. Well, dressed as well, but yes, but also, yes, stressed. You know, I wasn't sure if beat mixing was like riding a bike or not, or whether, you know, you'd actually be
Had your decks long since gone then?
I've still got them, but they had been like packed away, and they hadn't been touched for a long time. You know, I think I had, just going back to what you said before about, you know, whether any kind of the fire had gone, I had a lot of the fun of it beaten out of me, and I did need. Looking back, I think I did need a few years just completely away. You know. Didn't follow what was happening at all. Probably went, you know, a year or two at a time without going to a nightclub. And yeah, I'd kind of, I guess, you know, passion had gone at that point. But I did whatever the gig was, and yeah, enjoyed it, and really enjoyed it. And it was nice to see people, and nice to kind of, you know, play music again. And you know, I still don't do that. I'm actually doing more the last year or two than I've done in ages and ages. Well, that's still only about 6 to 8 gigs a year. This year is more than that, actually. I'm actually had to start. Well,
don't forget, we are at the back end of a pandemic where no one's done anything 2 years before.
True, yeah, of course, yeah, but yeah, no, it's really, you know, I'm kind of at the point with it now where I love doing it. I wouldn't love it if I did it every week. I'm pretty sure of that. But to kind of, you know, dip back into your old life and see people and, you know, visit, you know, the old world. It's fantastic.
I have a pen and paper here, and I will scribble your name down to put in my diary to invite you to come and join us in Spain next year for a little event that we do.
I'd love that.
I mean, I'm sure I could tempt you over, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love that. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, no, that'd be brilliant.
People will be happy to see that you have got the passion back and that you are back doing it again. So a busy 9 to 5, and you started off by saying that you still live a few streets away from the house where you were born, right?
Not where I was born, but where I kind of grew up. Yeah, about 3 blocks away. Yeah, about 200 yards from where I'm sitting now. So it's kind of nice and not. It's nice and not nice. You know, if I'm well rooted and, you know, obviously I know the place well and people well, you do kind of think, you know, is it a bit tragic? Just never really moved. But then, you know, I'm fortunate to have, you know, been to lots of places around the world. I'm not one of these people. It's like I live, you know, here because it's the best place in the world and there's nowhere like it. And, you know, I'm perfectly aware that I'd be happy living in lots of places. I'm just quite happy here, you know, and well set. And, you know, the kids are getting towards the end of their education now, but it's, you know, it's worked very well from.
So, how many kids? Tell me about family life.
So I have a daughter who is 17, a son who's 14, who's actually made a tune in music tech at school, which is really good. He came home the other week. He's like, "Oh, I've made this tune." I'm like, "Okay, yeah." And he stuck it on. I'm like, "That's really good." Sadly, he's kind of only got the kind of version on it on his phone. So I genuinely would play it in a nightclub if I had a kind of high enough quality file of it. It's kind of, well, he also needs to make it a bit longer. It's only like 2 minutes, but it's kind of, it's so many things at once. It's a bit Voodoo Ray. It's a bit UK garage. It's quite, because he gets it from all sides, because his stepdad is Luke Unabomber.
Okay.
Luke loves it as well. And he really feels music. He loves it. He's well excited by it. His knowledge of rap is like, not just current stuff, old stuff as well. It's like encyclopedic. And
as soon as you said that, I really wanted to finish off by saying it's extensive.
Yeah, he knows. He loves his music. Lila loves it too, actually. I have a stepdaughter as well. She's 16, started GCSEs today, and a stepson who's like 22. Yeah. So, depending on what day of the week it is, it can be quite hectic around our house.
I can imagine. Well, Tom, we've been talking for 90 minutes here.
Really?
And I know we've only really scratched the surface of a very impressive career. You were very open with some of the low points. I feel we didn't really discuss a great deal about the high points, because I'm sure there are a lot more highs than there were mediocre gigs. A hell of a lot more. It was a pity that we couldn't get Craig on with us, because I'm sure Craig would have been able to talk about occasions where he would have taken you to Wales and the likes. And over the course of the months, I always invite the guests back on, and we'll have a little panel, and we'll all just have a chat about whatever comes up. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share before I allow you to continue with your Tuesday night?
Not really. Thanks very much, for having me on. It's fun to talk about, these times with people that were there or lived it, or at least understand it, because a lot of the time, in your day-to-day life, you're with people who couldn't give a toss about it, basically. And so it is lovely to kind of be with the like-minded people. Mm-hmm. This Saturday is the Hacienda's 40th birthday party. Obviously the Hacienda is now flats, has been for a long time, but beneath the flats is a car park, and the birthday party is in the car park on Saturday with me, Graham, Paulette, Greg Wilson, Kay Class, Hugh and Clark, and anyway, it's all being streamed on United Restream from about 6 o'clock, I think, on Saturday till about 1 or 2 in the morning. So
that is sheer coincidence, the fact that I've got you on a few days before that gig comes around, just the way that the dates fell. So that's I've used the word twice, very fortuitous this evening. My only recommendation for you is do not forget your headphones.
I learned that lesson. Although actually I did forget them about 3 years ago for Hacienda Classical gig in Manchester. I was on the tram. You get the tram to gigs now, and realised I didn't have them. And stepson had to go and get them. But the good thing about that one, have I forgot my USB? No, I lost one a couple of weeks ago. The Hacienda did this thing in London at Tobacco Dock, and there is a USB stick somewhere on the floor of that venue, or in someone's pocket.
Easter weekend, wasn't it? On the Friday. Masters at Work were there, because I wasn't flying over to Birmingham until the Sunday. And if I'd have known that gig was on before I booked my flights, I definitely would have come down to check that out. Was that amazing?
They were brilliant. Masters at Work were fantastic. They did about 2.5 hours, and I was kind of, wondering what they would do, whether they would, because, we do, it's not that unusual at some of these Hacienda events for some of the names that didn't necessarily play at the club very much in the past to just turn up and play whatever they play week in, week out. Mm-hmm. And Masters at Work didn't do that at all, actually. They did about 2.5 hours. The last hour and a half was kind of, big classics, but, put together in their inimitable telepathic way. But the first hour was really special for me anyway, because it wasn't necessarily current stuff, but it was lots of less well-known things or more recent things. But again, just the way they kind of assemble it and do it, and that was just fantastic. I had a brilliant hour there. That was,
wonderful.
Just loved it. Loved it.
Wonderful. Well, listen, we could talk and reminisce all evening, but I will cut this short now. I'll say thank you again, my friend. I really appreciate your time, and I'll drop you a message later. I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody now.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, my man. Yeah. One love. I'll say hi to Jason. Good evening. What time is it there? Why are you still awake all the way down under? How are you, sir? Thank you to everyone that's been commenting. Really enjoyed talking to Tom, a true legend. At some point, I think it was Chris who said, a true DJ's DJ. That's right. That was all that we ever wanted to be, right? As DJs, we wanted to be known as the DJ's DJ, and Tom most definitely is. I say time and time again, we barely scratched the surface with his story, and we will definitely get him back on. Right, Jason is in Bangkok at the moment. Okay, so it's not as bad as being down under. Hello, my friend. Thank you, Pugs, for liking the video. I'll say again, each week I broadcast on my own profile. I also broadcast on the Inspire and Be Inspired page. If you aren't a fan of the page, then please do head on over and give us a like, give us a follow. It all helps with the numbers. You can also subscribe to the archives on YouTube. And just this week, I have now started to load all of the spoken podcasts to a bespoke Spotify channel. So if you take a look on my djandyWard.net website, there's a link there, or just do a search for Inspire and Be Inspired on Spotify. Thank you for continuing to watch on a weekly basis. Thank you for continuing to come back and check out the recording and downloading the podcast. That is it for me this evening. I'll look to the front of the screen here, and next Tuesday I'm actually going to take a week off. I'm going to take a well-earned break, and in 2 weeks' time I am going to be talking to some young blood from the second city out of Birmingham town, a young gentleman by the name of Kaizu. Okay, very talented young musician, poet, lyricist, rapper. I'm going to be lifting the lid on this very talented young gentleman, and so I can lay claim to being there at the beginning of his journey. He's already doing great things, and it will be interesting to share the music world as seen through the eyes of a young pup. All right, so that's Kaizu, aka Harvey Wilmington Christmas. 2 weeks' time. I think it's going to be the first week of June. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your eyes and your ears. Thank you to all of my Access crew for the regular support. I'm out of here. You take care now.